Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. I'd like to thank Georgine Durangu for having me on his CNBC Africa show this morning. He's in Kigali. Macro thoughts, Bitcoin breached $6,000 for the first time. We're now at we're at 5,900 as we speak. Home thoughts, I've been reading a number of books all at the same time, V.S. Naipaul's A Turn in the South, amongst others. But the one I'm enjoying most is Bwana, the life story of George Adamson. He describes his childhood in India, his family's move to Kenya, and the strange and varied ways in which he earned a living when he came out to Africa after leaving his English school. These ran almost the whole gamut of available jobs and ranged from ploughman, sisal, plantation hand, barman, milk roundsman, to trading in goats, beeswax and honey, entering government service as a locust control officer, making roads, becoming a professional hunter, mica mining, and finally turned gold prospector, searching for the Queen of Sheba's mines. Among the many exciting safaris he made was an expedition to Lake Rudolph, in the course of which he crossed its dangerous waters in a boat which he and a friend built out of acacia branches and ground sheets. It is an excellent book. As well as being a thrilling autobiography of a man totally dedicated to the preservation of wildlife, Bwana contains unique information concerning East African animals, which have perhaps never been so intimately observed over many years. Put up a photograph of Lake Nakuru from Ariba R. Of course, there was an accident there with a helicopter crashing, and it taking 7 hours for the rescue team apparently to reach it. I like this Heart Island in the Maldives. And then David Yarrow, who's been in the Savo East, takes a wonderful photograph, evocative, iconic Tim strolling through a yellow fever tree forest in southern Kenya. He said, "Stay safe, mate. It's been awesome." And if you are interested in elephants, Amsali and Savo are the place to be. My piece I've read separately in a separate podcast is called Political Risk. And I was talking about China, I was talking about successionism in Spain, Kurdistan. I was talking about political risk in Africa, in South Africa, Tanzania, where President John Pombe Joseph Magufuli presided over the abject surrender of Barrack's chairman John Thornton last week in a ceremony that looked like something from the end of World War II. I quoted Aliko Dangote from the Financial Times Africa conference, who said they're coming through the back door to seize your assets. I ask, the question for Tanzania is this: is Tanzania still an investment destination, or will this prove a Pyrrhic victory? I said about Kenya, it would be remiss of me not to speak of our date with destiny on October 26th. Interestingly, President Trump is set to accede to the release of the final documents on the JFK assassination on the same date. Gina Moore tweeted so much for anyone paying attention to the revote in Kenya on October 26th, I guess. I said Rosalind Akombe's, who was the erstwhile IEBC commissioner's disembodied voice, came to us out of the ether. The IEBC chairman surfaced and did a near-perfect rendition of a rabbit caught in the headlights. The NASA leader announced all will be revealed the day before or on October 25th. I said we are in a fluid moment. Will October 26th prove a political guillotine? Yes, it will. Can the opposition maintain this insurgent and asymmetric response and degrade October 26th? We will discover the answers to these questions soon enough. Abe's gamble on an early election may have just won him a chance to lead Japan through 2021. He got a supermajority, wins a 2/3 supermajority in the election, which allows him to change the pacifist component of the constitution. So it's quite a big deal. President Trump is seen here wearing reading glasses, departing Trump National Golf Club Sunday, October the 22nd. The big question for me really is how Madrid is actually going to implement its proposed actions in Catalonia, said Caroline Gray, a lecturer in politics and Spanish at Aston University in the UK. Catalan government officials and many within the Mossos and Catalan media are not just going to stand down without a fight. Prime Minister Al-Abadi co-chairs the inaugural Iraq-Saudi Arabia coordination meeting, speaks of his aim to see economic development for mutual benefit. This is obviously an effort by the Secretary of State Tillerson. Its de facto capital is falling, its territory is shriveled from the size of Portugal to a handful of outposts, its surviving leaders are on the run. But rather than declare the Islamic State and its virulent ideology conquered, many Western and Arab counter-terrorism officials are bracing for a new lethal incarnation of the jihadist group. The organization has a proven track record as an insurgency able to withstand major military onslaughts while still recruiting adherents around the world, ready to kill in its name. Islamic State leaders signaled more than a year ago that they'd drawn up contingency plans to revert to their roots as a guerrilla force after the loss of their territory in Iraq and Syria. Nor does the group need to govern cities to inspire so-called lone wolf terrorist attacks abroad, a strategy it has already adopted to devastating effect in Manchester and Orlando. The Islamic State has not finished, said Aaron Y. Zelin. IS has a plan, and that is to wait out their enemies locally in order to gain time to rebuild their networks while at the same time provide inspiration to followers outside to keep fighting their enemies further away. It is clear that we are contending with an intense UK terrorist threat from Islamist extremists, Andrew Parker said in a speech on Tuesday. That threat is multidimensional, evolving rapidly, and operating at a scale and pace we've not seen before. General Joseph F. Dunford Jr., the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, predicted last month that the loss of territory would precipitate a loss of credibility. We'll continue to see reduction in territory, reduction in freedom of movement, reduced resources, and less credibility in the narrative, he said. The group has also developed a powerful social media network that with no physical presence allows it to spew propaganda, claim responsibility for terrorist attacks, and not just inspire attacks, but also help plot and execute them remotely. I think it's the end of the road, but the thing about this sort of thing is you can always find disillusioned people, the long tail of disillusioned people in a population of 7 billion, quite a few. War on the Korean Peninsula Targeting a Better Peace is an article by Albert Palazzo for the Lowy Institute, saying the rhetoric emanating from Washington and Pyongyang may soon reach the point at which a peaceful resolution is no longer possible. A year ago, the chance of war on the Korean Peninsula would have been considered remote. Now, the call for a US preemptive strike is gaining support, while North Korea routinely issues threats to the US, South Korea, and even Australia. With every passing day, the possibility of war seems to increase as Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un do their best to set ablaze an already highly flammable situation. The tone between the dotard and the rocket man has reached the point that one miscalculation could trigger a war. Have a look at the article I wrote on the 18th of September about a screaming comes across the sky. Ascension of Mount Everest poses little challenge to Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, says the DPRK News. Just when I thought I couldn't like Jacinda Ardern anymore, I learned that in her spare time she likes to DJ. Big data meets Big Brother as China moves to rate its citizens, as a very interesting article in Wired. And it ties up with my point I was making about Xinjiang in my article, where I said Xinjiang has become a laboratory experiment in social control for the Chinese government. The Chinese government are creating citizen scores. By 2020 it will be mandatory. The behavior of every single citizen and legal person, which includes every company or other entity in China, will be rated and ranked, whether they like it or not. International markets, the yen hit a 3-month low as Abe win secures the Bank of Japan stimulus. We're now trading at 113.77. Earlier on we crossed 114. I'm looking for us to head towards 115.50. The Nikkei 225 gained 0.9%, headed for a record 15th straight day of gains. The Nikkei 225 as a whole reaches its most overheated phase since the start of Abenomics, though market breadth analysis shows not quite yet, says David Inglis. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 117.57, dollar index 93.60, Japanese yen 113.78, Swiss franc 0.9845, the pound 131.90, the Australian dollar, which has been on a firmish track, 0.7819 last, Indian rupee 65.025, South Korean won 1130.77, Brazilian real 319.29, Egyptian pound 17.6522, South African rand 13.6944. The rand could fall quite sharply back to levels of 14.40, in my opinion. Dollar index, this is a chart from T Commodity. I think we're headed towards 95.50. Point of fact, euro dollar, another chart from T Commodity. I think we're currently trading 117.55. I think we're going to 114.50. Commodity markets, WTI crude oil, which has confounded me this year, now trading at $52.15. I think we're headed back below 50, but it tends to zig and zag on the way. Gold 1275.75 trading. That's come off of late. I think it's had to come off with a stronger dollar. Emerging markets, Ian Bremmer tweeted Sao Paulo at night, an extraordinary sight. Sub-Saharan Africa had fruitful talks with His Excellency Kaguta Museveni on security cooperation, promised full support as we embark on new offensive against Al-Shabaab. This is President Big Cheese Famajo. Arrested in Malawi after mob attacks on vampires. Deadly mob attacks on people suspected to be vampires have led to 140 arrests in Malawi. The situation has spun out of control. The Inspector General of Police, Lexon Kachama, told the AP more arrests were expected. 9 people have been killed in the attacks that began last month after rumors of bloodsuckers spread. In the latest case, a man with epilepsy was burned to death in Blantyre. Another person there was stoned to death. Mutharika has appealed for calm in the 4 districts where the mob attacks have taken place, saying this week, my government will offer protection from these alleged bloodsuckers. The UN and US Embassy have blacklisted some of the areas as dangerous zones for staffers. Take a look at this short video of the Congo President Sassou Nguesso arriving for a national event. Sadiq Shaban says, see what power does to African despots. Barrick is to give Tanzania mine stake and $300 million to end the dispute, a 16% stake in 3 gold mines, a 50% share in revenues from the mines, and a one-off payment of $300 million. It took a day, but Barrick Gold Corporation's tentative deal with Tanzania's government to end a tax dispute at its African subsidiary is becoming clearer. The proposed payment is a show of good faith, said John Thornton on Thursday at a briefing after a 6-hour meeting with President John Magufuli in Dar es Salaam. The state will have representatives on the board of the company, and at every mine, the company will hire local full-time staff. Acacia will have the headquarters for its operations in Mwanza. Acacia will keep all the cash generated by mines in Tanzania in accounts within the country. The funds that Acacia pays will be used to fund infrastructure projects in Tanzania, Magufuli said. The new structure that Barrick has recommended, a system for the 21st century of a 50-50 partnership, is a huge shift in the regulation of natural resources, not only on the African continent, but in the world, Magufuli said. This shows the intent of the Tanzanian government, but also the intent of Barrick, that now we open a new chapter that will enable Tanzanians to see the benefits of their mines. However, Acacia is saying the first comment I would make is that Barrick is equally aware of our balance sheet as we are. We don't have the ability to make an upfront $300 million payment, he said. Have a look at this photograph from Senke, which reminded me of World War II and the surrender of the Nazis. This is not the South Africa of our dreams, as the South African Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. Our state, comrades, is now being talked about in the most negative terms all over the world, Ramaphosa said on Friday in a speech to members of the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union in Cape Town. When they look at South Africa today, they're looking at a country that they say has been captured by certain interests, by certain families, by certain individuals. That is not the South Africa of our dreams. Easing into Saturday night, Cape Town is looking good. Take a look at this photo. South African all shares up 14.4% so far this year. Dollar rand last around 13.70. The target for the bears is going to be 14.40. South Africa's rand is being hammered this week. Today's loss is down to speculation. Zuma will fire Ramaphosa. That's from Paul Wallace. Egyptian pound 17.6522 seems to have stabilized and found support around here. Nigerian all share up 36.14% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 37.05% so far this year. It's a mad world, tweeted this, poll on, poll off. The FD is saying that the political turmoil threatens the rerun of Kenyan presidential vote. Joshua Onyango says he's willing to die in protest to demand reform of Kenya's Electoral Commission ahead of Thursday's repeat presidential election. If there is no change, he vows to stop the vote. We will not relent, even if the police kill us all, said Mr. Onyango. We can't have a corrupt referee to oversee the rematch after a bungled election. The IEBC is ready to conduct an election on the 26th, but the country is not yet ready politically, one Western diplomat said. Neither Mr. Kenyatta or Mr. Odinga appear ready to compromise, even as the crisis deepens. The president has been dismissive of his rival's decision to withdraw from the contest, describing it as a stunt by a man who knows he cannot win. Business has never been this bad, not even in the more years, says the chief executive of one of the country's biggest banks, referring to Daniel Arap Moi, the autocrat who ruled for 24 years. Kenya Power released full-year results. Non-fuel revenue was up 5.594%. Full-year revenue up 11.411%. Operating profit was down 2.434%. Profit before tax was down 9.691%. Profit after tax was up 0.959%. Basic diluted EPS was up 0.813%. Dividend was maintained at 50 cents a share. Cash and cash equivalents at the close of the year was negative 1.15 billion compared to positive 5.5 billion. During the year under review, the net profit before tax decreased by 9.7%, mainly attributable to increased transmission and distribution costs as a result of maintenance activities on the expanded network. Electricity sales grew by 4.5%, This, combined with an improved average yield, led to a 5.6% increase in sales revenue. Electricity units generated from thermal plants increased by 66.9%. That's not good. Look, the price-earnings ratio is less than 3. The issue is the lack of share price performance, and what has been a very lackluster management when it comes to share price performance. Nairobi all shares up 16.19% so far this year, but has tumbled 10.688% since hitting a multi-year high on August the 28th. NSE 20 is up 11.23% year to date, and that's down 13.856% since hitting a multi-year high on August the 28th. I appreciate the fact that you stopped by, and I'm deeply grateful.